right?
Yeah, some days can really feel like that, where it's like, oh my goodness, and you feel you yourself doing the internal eye roll, thinking, no, arrange your face, don't do the eye roll so she can see you. On my bullet points on my pinboard, I have behind my phone for the lives, I've put in really big letters, keep your ego in check. And I think that's what it is. That's what really the elementary years have taught me just in the past 6 months, that actually what my aim, not that my needs are unimportant, but I need to just keep my ego out of this completely, because if I am triggered and continue to be triggered by Olivia or any other child being rude to me, then it's just pointless. I'm not doing the development or the growth I need to. As you say, that really hit home to me, that they're not doing it intentionally. They're not intentionally being rude. They're just saying what's on their mind now, and that really can help us keep our ego in check and go, okay, this still is a tiny human, relatively speaking, a 6-year-old versus a 44-year-old. I am the adult here, and I am should be more in control of myself. As you said on the last one, it's the calm and confident leader and not collapsing. Like, it's, yes, it may be really frustrating that you're having the 50th discussion about going shopping or whatever, or arranging the wardrobe, but we can't collapse. Otherwise they're going to see that every negotiation we are going to collapse, and that's not really going to serve them longer term, is it?
And you know what? I mean, if we are rested and well fed, and our other relationships are doing well, we'll be in a great place, and we will be able
Yeah.
to have a peaceful and centered conversation. That's not life, right? Life is,
Yes.
sometimes we are well, sometimes we struggle. And you do need to see that this is okay, right? They do need to have this experience of the adult getting frustrated sometimes. And
Yeah.
then the adult being able to come back and repair the relationship. Because a lot of the work of the second plane, in terms of the moral development, so the development of the values of the child
Yeah.
figuring out what's right and wrong, a lot of that comes from the adult having the humility to come back and say, you know what, I'm
Yes.
not happy with how I reacted
Yes.
when you chose that behavior, or when you were frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was feeling tired, or I was feeling hungry, or whatever it is. And now I realize that I should have responded in a different way. So what I
Yeah.
loved doing with my second plane children was second chances. And so, I would give them second chances. They would give me second chances. And so if there was an interaction that didn't go as respectfully as we would have wanted it to go,
Yes.
we would I could tell them, like, okay, that didn't work out. Let's try it again. Let's have a do-over, and let's think about how we want that do-over to go. And, and they would do the same with me. Right.
And it's really fun doing that as well, actually, because I find that when I do that with Olivia and Harry, even though he's younger, like, they have a lot of fun, like, making fun of me as well, and they like do an impersonation of my angry face or whatever. So it's actually quite, and that's healing in itself anyway, and that repairs the relationship massively, doesn't it? Being able to, the humility and the laughter sort of combination just brings that connection. It's yeah.
Yeah. So the other day, my son got really angry, and he was trying to put some toys back in a box. Got really angry, and he took one of the toys and threw it across the room. Mind you, he's 9, right? So, you would think that by the age of 9, this was kind of gone, but it wasn't. Like,
Yeah.
it was just too much for him. He just threw it across the
Yeah.
room, and so it came all the way to where I was sitting. And so I walked over with the piece, and I said, hey, what's going on? And that can be a really key phrase, because you're not judging, you're not pointing
Yes.
fingers. And so you're helping the child to de-escalate the situation
Yeah.
just by being objective and saying, what's going on? And, this speaks to kind of the observation that we talk about in Montessori,
Yes.
where you want to first get an objective understanding of what is going on without projecting, without coming to conclusions, without judging.
Yeah.
Right. So if
Really
I have
getting curious
just
is the
curious.
first, sorry, getting curious is the first step, isn't it?
Exactly. So
They
get
say that in any like healing journey, don't they? And like personal growth and somatic practices, it's like get curious about what you're feeling in your body, what's really going on without, as you say, going to the next stage of drawing conclusions when you're like a millisecond into the scenario. And but yeah, as you said, that observation is that it's, I guess, giving us that gap, isn't it, of like, okay, can we give ourselves and give our child that gap of whatever we do, whether it's a deep breath or it's a mantra or keep my ego in check or whatever it is, that we can just, yeah, say from that loving, curious place. I love that. Yeah, what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. And it helps you to de-escalate like yourself, like your own frustration, right? If you can just remember to stay in the moment and focus on what is, as opposed to the stories that are going on in your head. Because, it happens to me too, where your child behaves in a certain way. They're rude, or they throw something, or they hit a sibling. And our minds go to the future, right? They go to like, oh my gosh, my child is going to end up in
Yes.
jail because he's going to
Yeah.
shoot someone one day.
So aggressive.
Or, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
or my daughter is never going to be able to function in society because she's always going to melt down and never going to stand up for herself. So we go there, and it's
Scary how quickly we go there.
in a
It's
split
bonkers, isn't it?
in a
Even
split
in 2 seconds, we've like gone with
Yes.
this ridiculous future
Yeah,
scenario. Yeah.
absolutely. And so practicing asking the question, what happened or what's going on,
Yeah.
is
What happened? Yeah.
you do have to
I
practice
love
it.
that.
You do have to practice it
Yes.
because it's a an off switch to that story in your head, right?
Yes.
And so, but if you can practice that and practice that in small moments, right, with small irritations, small annoyances, so that when the big annoyances and the big irritations come up, you have that tool. And so,
Yeah. It's
hey,
natural.
exactly. So you just have it, and it's going to feel odd at first because we are primed, we're conditioned to point fingers. Our brain wants to come to a conclusion, right? Our brain wants to say, "You're the bad guy. You're the victim," and I'm the one who has to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And the
It's like with toddlers. Sorry, it makes me think of that with toddlers when they hit or bite, which is normal. And Harry went through a stage of biting, just his best friend actually, and it's so easy to fall into that. He's the aggressor and the other child's the victim. And luckily it was my best friend, and we spend, it was her son, so we spent a lot of time talking about that and like not labeling, not putting our children into these things. Both children were having a hard time in
Yes.
different ways. But that's really sounds like the toddler stage, as you say. It's just not getting too fixed in our ideas of what's going on, like trying to see the big picture. Yeah.
Yes. And the beauty of the elementary children is that, unlike the toddlers, they're much more capable of telling you what's going on, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that's the reasoning mind that is like, thank
Yeah.
goodness it's there, because their problems become bigger. Their problems become harder for us to handle, right? It's no longer the simple problems of the toddler, the simple frustrations of the toddler.
Yes.
The elementary child, because their brain has a much stronger capacity for imagination, their brain now has the ability to do what ours does, which is to project into the future, right? And so when they project into the future, because we have what's called the negativity bias, which is that we always jump to the worst possible conclusion, that's where their brain goes. And so that's kind of the hard part of the elementary child. But the positive part, the helpful part, is that we can hear them. We can hear what's going on in their head. They're able to tell us what's going on in their head.
Yeah.
And so, for example, with my son, who he threw this toy, and so I walked back. I walked over with the piece of the toy, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he, he started like, it won't fit. It's so annoying. I've tried everything and I just can't. And and he was on one hand, he was expressing his frustration, but I tried to see into his fear. Like, what was his bigger fear? What was his,
Okay.
um, then that's also key with children, is trying to understand where this behavior is coming from. Um, and for him, he wanted to put this toy away because I had asked him to, and because I had expressed my frustration that there were too many toys, and it was causing me to feel overwhelmed, right? And so that's the positive part of his behavior, was
Yes.
he was trying to meet my need, the need that I had
Yeah.
requested be met, right? He was trying to meet it. It wasn't working out. And then he got frustrated. And then he threw the piece. And so I was able to just, because I asked what's going on, and I gave him time to kind of unload his frustrations, then I was able to say, oh, you were working really hard because you wanted to create a living room that was clean and tidy, and it's not working out for you. And I appreciate that you're working really hard to make our environment tidy.
Oh,
So
that's so lovely.
it's like seeing the good in them. And again,
Yes.
it's not
Yeah.
something that you're always going to be able to do on cue, right? At first, what I had to do for a long time was deal with the situation the best that I could, muddle through it, do things
Yes.
wrong, but then go back and sit and give myself a second chance and say, okay, what was really going on? What was he trying to accomplish? How
Yes.
could I have responded differently? Right?
Yes.
What are these three parts that I could have brought to the conversation? And then replayed them in my mind. And little by little, it became something that I became more capable of doing on the spot.
Yes.
So, and
That's the time period of when we realize what it was, and when it actually happens, that response time becomes shorter, doesn't it? Like, even sometimes, even if we overreact in the moment, like within 2 or 3 minutes, I know, I can understand myself where I've gone wrong. And you said earlier about, when it doesn't go where we wanted and we speak disrespectfully or something, and that often happens when there's another sibling or siblings involved. So Harry's younger, and his needs are different because he's 4, and there are times where I'm sharp with Olivia and I say, I can't deal with this now because I need to support Harry. And then, as you say, the work is to sort of come back to that later and say, I'm sorry I wasn't able to, I can give you my full attention now. And quite often, and you can let me know if this is okay, quite often we'll have a conversation as we go to sleep. So they sleep in one big floor bed, Olivia and Harry, with a separate mattress. So at bedtime, I lie in between them and hold both their hands. It's really cute. I love it. And Harry usually falls asleep earlier. And then Olivia and I will talk for sort of 10 minutes afterwards. And